Muito bom dia, volto a dar-vos as boas-vindas a esta sala Sofia de Melo Breiner, no Centro Cultural de Belém. Esta segunda sessão do dia vai debruçar-se sobre o financiamento europeu para a cultura, como tirar partido das sinergias entre os programas da União Europeia. Assim, sem mais demoras, passo a palavra a Francisco Cipriano, é impulsionador do projeto Laboratório de Candidaturas, Fundos Europeus para a Arte, Cultura e Criatividade. Muito bom dia, bem-vindo.
Thank you so much. I'm going to use the English language to work in this panel. Thank you so much to the Portuguese presidency for inviting me to be the moderator of this session. My name is Francisco Cipriano, as was mentioned already, and I'm very pleased to be the moderator of this very important panel and with a very actual subject, which is the synergies between EU programs. I would just briefly say a few words about me. I've been working with European funds for the past 25 years, more or less. I was working at the Portuguese state for a while. Then I moved to Brussels for DG Regio for a long period of time as well. Then I moved again to Portugal, still working within the funds. And now I'm working at the Carlos Gulbenkian Foundation, which is one of the biggest foundations in Portugal, dealing exactly with the funds. So we have some projects with Creative Europe, but also with Horizon 2020, the previous program, Erasmus Plus, also with the Portuguese Partnership Agreement. So basically, it's what I do. So it's I would say my field of action. I would like to start by presenting our speakers. We have an amazing panel of speakers, and I'm very pleased that we are here today to discuss this subject. Maybe I will start by Maciej Hoffman. He's a policy officer at European Commission at DG for Education and Culture. As you know, this DG is responsible for the education and cultural policy in the European Union, for Creative Europe program, but not only, as we will see today. Then we are pleased to have Laurent de Mercier. He's also a policy officer, but at the DG Regio. As you know, DG Regio is responsible for the management of the cohesion policy. Then we have the pleasure to have Harald Hartung. He's the head of unity at DG Research and Innovation, also from European Union. And this DG, as you know, they are responsible for Horizon Europe. I have to shift the name because the name has changed and I still have the Horizon 2020 in my mind. So from Horizon Europe is the biggest program for science, knowledge, innovation. So it's really a big instrument that we have to take in account. And then at our colleagues from Portugal, we have Rui Inácio, is director of the Regional Policy Unit at the National Agency for Cohesion and Development in Portugal. This agency has changed the name several times, but they are still responsible for the global coordination of the cohesion policy in Portugal, responsible for the Portuguese Partnership Agreement and also for the Resilience and Recovery Plan. From Erasmus, we are very pleased to have Claudia Gomes. She's from the Agency of Education and Training in Portugal. And at the agency, she works with the monitoring and the evaluation team, but she also part of the group of these synergies between Erasmus Plus and the other programs. So couldn't be more interesting to have you here, Claudia. Thank you for your presence. It's a major subject, as you know. Just to underline a bit of the subject, I would say that this idea of taking advantage of the synergies between EU programs are one of the cornerstones of the new Creative Europe. Articulation with the other European funds became a major subject. And that's what this session is about. So we would like to ask our speakers to explore the synergies, the complementarities, not only at a strategical level, which is, of course, very important, but also maybe ask you some direct tips or suggestions to break this, I would say apparent, because I think it's apparent, fragmentation that seems to exist. So that will be our, more or less, goal for today. I think to start the discussion, maybe I would like to raise a global question and give the possibility to each of you to present your ideas. I would say how to take the advantage of these synergies between EU programs. How can we maximize this opportunity of the different funds and be able to work in a more consistent way within the cultural sector? Maybe I'll start by you, Maciej Hoffman. Can you give us some tips?
Thank you very much. Muito obrigado, Francisco. Bom dia, colegas, senhoras e senhores. Muito obrigado pelo convite. Yeah, I'm afraid my Portuguese stops here, but yeah, I'm very happy to answer this question and very pleased to be here with you virtually. In a way, what I would like to share with you will be also regrouping and linking back to what has already been said during the 2 days of this conference by Commissioner Maria Gabriel, Vice President Skinas, also a number of my colleagues from the European Commission. So in a way, it's also quite an easy role that I have now to kind of build on what they said, but I also will try to kind of, maybe add some new ideas to the table. So as Francisco said, where we come to play as DG Education and Culture, of course, we look at Creative Europe as the only EU program as such supporting culture and creative sectors, but we also do look beyond that program. And this is very much, of course, what we do. I'm part of this culture policy unit in DG Education and Culture. So we, of course, do work very closely with European Union culture ministries, but also other services of the European Commission working on the range of topics. We work very closely with offices of cities and regions in Brussels. We work very closely, finally, also with international organizations, such as, for instance, OECD, also linking to the topics on culture and what culture can do on these different levels. And I essentially wanted to kind of touch upon two specific points. First of all, the mainstreaming of culture into European Union policies and programs. With its very practical aspects, I will try to also give you some examples how this mainstreaming happens in practice. And then I would like to also speak very specifically about information sharing, because we do believe in the Commission that, one of the big challenges is actually the fact that we do know that these opportunities exist, but how do we make the culture and creative sectors aware of their existence? And this is, of course, where a big challenge for all of us lies. So first of all, going to the point on mainstreaming, I will, of course, speak from the perspective of DG Education and Culture, but as I said, it's actually a big task and challenge done on many levels. So I mentioned some of these entities we collaborate with, but it also has to be kind of emphasized here that cultural networks, European cultural networks, have also a very big role to play in this idea of mainstreaming of culture. So making sure that culture is taken into consideration across a number of European Union policies, from local and regional development to research and innovation, to support to SMEs and entrepreneurship, to European Green Deal, for instance. And there is also a big role that the Creative Europe funded networks play in this regard, because they are also very much in touch with different Commission services. And we also had an occasion at this conference to listen to some of the representatives of this network. So it's also, of course, from my side, a recognition for their hard work, because we do this hand in hand. Now, when you look at European Union strategic documents for culture, some of these documents were, of course, already mentioned at this conference, and many of you are familiar with them. But just as a reminder, the new European Agenda for Culture from 2018 from the European Commission, the Work Plan for Culture 2019-2022 from the Council, from EU culture ministries. And finally, the European Framework for Action on Cultural Heritage from the Commission, also from 2018. You see in all these documents that culture is very much linked and recognized, of course, for its intrinsic value, for the fact that it also brings societies closer and brings them together, that it fosters understanding, but it's also very much recognized for its role for societies and for economies. It's not about instrumentalization of culture, it's more about thinking what culture can do on this global scale. It's in fact actually a recognition that culture and creative sectors are important for our economies and for our societies. So in this case, speaking, for instance, about the European Framework for Action on Cultural Heritage, this is a document that comes actually as a fruit of European Year of Cultural Heritage 2018. That was a Europe-wide celebration of cultural heritage, of its diversity. Hundreds of thousands of events happened all across Europe in cities and in regions, but there was also a very clear political dimension to it. So looking at how cultural heritage can help in a range of topics, how it can link to the range of different topics. And this was also very practically put in place in our case as DG Education and Culture, but also the whole Commission in working together hand in hand. So if you now take this European Framework for Action on Cultural Heritage with a number of key initiatives and projects that happened or are still happening, you will of course see examples of Creative Europe funded projects, but you will see examples also from Erasmus+, from structural funds, from Horizon 2020, Research Innovation Program, and so on. So this is also a very, very clear example that there is an added value in working together, and that there are different synergies to be found. Another example, and this was also mentioned by Vice President Skinas and Commissioner Gabriel, the new European Bauhaus. So we are also by now, I guess, quite familiar, and you've heard a lot about this initiative. But here also the general idea is to look for this more bottom-up, participatory and democratic process, bringing together culture and creative sectors, entities to work also on these global challenges. Then again, looking at the future budgets, I don't want to speak about specific programs too much because we will have other colleagues who will talk about that as well. But just to mention very briefly, Recovery and Resilience Facility, a very key element of the future budget of the European Union, but a very key element also of European Union helping our economies and societies to recover from the crisis. And it has to be noted that this instrument can also assist culture and creative sectors. This is, of course, a very cautious estimate, and Commissioner Gabriel mentioned it yesterday, but we are now looking at the proposals made by the member states in their recovery and reform plans, and we could estimate that as much as 9 billion euros might end up being devoted to broadly understood culture and creative sectors. And again, this ranges from, let's say, energy efficiency of heritage buildings to working conditions of artists, or upskilling and reskilling culture and creative professionals. It's very important to know that there's this kind of horizontal aspect, and again linking to different aspects of culture and creative sectors. I also wanted to link to yesterday's roundtable on research and innovation for creative industries that was also organized by the Portuguese presidency at the margins of our conference today, with, among others, also Commissioner Gabriel, a member of the European Parliament, Christian Eller, the Portuguese Minister for Science, who was also chairing the whole event. If you did not have a chance to listen to it and see it, I really encourage you to find it on YouTube and discover for yourself. At that event, we had an occasion to look at 10 very inspiring projects, which were actually linking science, technology, arts, and culture in very specific and concrete ways. Quite a few of them were also funded by the European Union. So I think this is also a very, very practical dimension and very practical example with which we can demonstrate how the synergies can look in practice. And with this in mind, I want to link to the last point, sharing of information. So this is very important to share information about what's happening on these different levels, how culture and creative sectors can use the opportunities that are out there. And as a very practical example, what we have done in that regard, I want to speak about Creatives Unite platform, which was launched last year during COVID-19 pandemic. And the idea was to offer this special and dedicated place for culture and creative sectors. It was set up with the help by the European Commission in the context of the European Parliament pilot project finance, learning, innovation, and patenting for culture and creative industries. And the platform is being run now by the European Creative Hubs Network, also a pan-European organization regrouping culture and creative spaces. The idea is to offer this shared space for culture and creative sectors to share initiatives and actions that answer to COVID-19. The platform was very well received, and now it's reaching almost 40,000 users more than 1 year after it launched, and more than 900 publications that you can find on the website. So I really very much encourage you to go on creativesunite.eu and see for yourself. And again, quite a few of these initiatives that you will see there are linked to European actions. And in relation to this specific point on sharing the information, Commissioner Gabriel was also announcing that we are currently very busy working on this new interactive tools to help share knowledge and information about EU funding for culture. And we have the ambitious plan of launching these in September this year. So the idea here for us is also to work with more than 11 DGs in the European Commission, looking at around 15 programs of the European Union, looking also at good examples of projects financed in 2014-2020 from different programs. We want to go beyond Creative Europe. So we want to give the cultural sectors an opportunity by just few clicks being able to find information about what's relevant for them in different EU programs. So again, be it Erasmus+, structural funds, Recovery and Resilience Facility, Horizon Europe, you name it, we want to feature all of these programs there. Also programs such as, for instance, Citizenship, Equality, Rights and Values, a new program of the European Union, which can be also potentially very, very interesting for cultural sectors. So yeah, please stay tuned to this upcoming interactive tools. It's going to be a dedicated online platform on the Commission website, as well as a more traditional, I would say, PDF funding guide with these opportunities. So please do follow Creative Europe social media on Facebook and on Twitter to know the updates whenever these tools will be coming out. So I guess I will stop here, and I'm happy to hand over to next speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maciej. I think you just set the perfect ground for us. I think it was a great intervention. You mentioned a very important points. Information is one of those key aspects. Sharing, networking, I think you set the perfect ground for us. And also with the reference that you made for the last parallel session, and that will be my opportunity to pass to Harald Artung and to ask him the same question and let him know some new things about Horizon Europe. Harald. Did we miss Harald for a while? I guess so. Yes. I will rephrase my question, because it can actually be so updated also for Laurent, because he works at the DG Regio and the structural funds as whole weight in this kind of project. So I will give you the screen to you. Laurent, can you tell us a bit more about these synergies possibilities within the structural funds?
Okay, thank you, Francisco. Good afternoon, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So before giving practical tips on possible synergies between now we say cohesion policy funds, we do not say anymore structural funds. It's a new terminology. So synergies between cohesion policy funds and Creative Europe. I just want to remind you that well, contrary to Creative Europe, the cohesion policy funds, which include the ERDF, the ESF, are implemented in the so-called shared management, so in the partnership between the Commission and the Member States and the regions. As you know, we're currently at the beginning of the 2021-2027 programming period. Most of the member states and regions are now working on preparation of their partnership agreements and proposals for programs, respecting the partnership principle of stakeholders' engagement. And this brings me to the central role of managing authorities, which are in charge of implementing the cohesion policy programs. So managing authorities managing authorities are located at national or regional level. So why is it interesting? Why is this synergy between Creative Europe and cohesion policy funds so interesting? Well, because I would say the results of Creative Europe projects can be amplified and carried forward via the cohesion policy investments to achieve a durable impact of competitiveness, innovation and growth. For example, cohesion policy could fund additional capacity building in the region of some of the project partners or in regions not being part of the Creative Europe project, but that might benefit from Creative Europe project's results. Examples of potential investments in creative, cultural and creative industries could include investments in research, innovation, SME competitiveness and digitalization. And this brings me to the very important role of smart specialization strategies. As you probably know, smart specialization strategies, they were used in the previous programming period to as an enabling, as an ex-ante conditionality for investments in research and innovation for ERDF, and this will continue with the next with the new programming period. Smart specialization strategies will set out the national and original frameworks for investment and in resource innovation, SME competitiveness and digitalization, not only from the cohesion policy funds, but from all funding sources. So there are these smart specialization strategies are a key instrument for synergies. And by the way, about 120 regions have put cultural and creative industries in their smart specialization strategies. And now for the practical tips about how to better enforce synergies. For me, there are three main categories of stakeholders. First of all, the national and regional policymakers in charge of the development of the smart specialization strategies. So they should use what we call the entrepreneurial discovery process to identify the synergies. They should focus the preparatory work for synergies on strategic aims of their smart specialization strategies in terms of economic transformations and the fields that emerge as priorities. Of course, cultural and creative industries should emerge as one of these priorities, and on what individual member states and regions can influence. Second type of stakeholders, the authorities in charge of the drafting of partnership agreements and cohesion policy programs. So they should envisage type of priorities, implementation and project selection methods that allow for combination and synergies in the course of the cohesion policy programs implementation. They should also allow all types of innovation activities, including service innovation and non-technology driven innovation, such as design, creative thinking, because as you know, technology is not often not enough to be a successful innovator. Besides, well, also creative thinking, design-related activities can be crucial for innovations to succeed. I guess you from the cultural and creative sector, you know that. And last but not least, the national and regional authorities involved in Creative Europe, they should, well, through the national contact points of Creative Europe or similar bodies, they should actively cooperate with managing authorities in charge of cohesion policy programs and provide information to beneficiaries on cohesion policy funding opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurent. I think we have a very common ground to proceed. I took note of the capacity building. I think it's a great way of involving the cultural sector within the new cohesion and policy funds. I think it's a very good tip. Harold, we miss you for a while. I think you are already here with us. I was about to ask you because our colleague Maciej Hoffman just pointed out the important meeting aside of the Creative Europe conference that took place yesterday in Lisbon. So I would use this opportunity to ask you your view about these synergies between the cultural sector and the new Horizon to Europe program.
Well, thanks very much, Francisco. Well, dear colleagues, very welcome. This time exceptionally not from Brussels, but from Vienna. I feel very honored to be here at the launch of the Creative Program and Creative Europe program, and this the more as a little more than 15 years ago, I've been in charge of the culture program of the European Union, one of the predecessors of this program, and therefore I can now see things from the two angles, from the operational angle of the Creative Europe program and from the research angle of Horizon Europe. And yeah, what I would like to do now is to briefly take you through the approach we have in Horizon Europe for cultural heritage in this program. And as the boys, contrary to the girls, cannot do very many things in parallel, I have asked for the help of the colleagues from the organizers to guide us through the presentation, and we can start with the first slide if that is possible. I don't know, do you see it? Not yet. Wonderful. Yeah. So here is the first one. Let's already go directly to number 2, as far as the slides are concerned. And you will see here that this is the structure of the Horizon Europe program. In the middle, you've got one big slide where you can see the structure of this program. And there we've got clusters, and one cluster, the highlighted one, deals with creativity, culture, and inclusive society. And I think this is something very new, that we have a specific cluster dealing with cultural heritage. And I should also mention that when we have this now new in this program, we did not start from scratch. We have already a broad experience in Horizon Europe, and I think, Francisco, you have also experienced it in the past. Just to give you some figures, we've got in Horizon Europe some 187 million euros, which were spent on the previous cluster, which is Societal Challenge 6 for Cultural Heritage. With this, we financed 69 projects in the field, and throughout the entire Horizon 2020 program, we've spent some 600 million on cultural heritage related topics and research. Now, next slide, please. And in this cluster, we've got what we call 3 different destinations: democracy, social and economic transformations, and one specific one for cultural heritage. Now, how do we define this cultural heritage? We take a very broad approach to this, namely tangible cultural heritage like monuments, artifacts. There is the restoration, the preservation of that. Secondly, we've got the intangible cultural heritage, namely values, traditions, beliefs, which all make our perceptions. And the third area there are the cultural and creative industries, Maciej has already made reference to. And the fourth point is that we, in our broadened approach, want to engage large parts of the population, not only the traditional culture consumers, which are maybe a bit elderly and well off with gray hair, but we want to have the young people to engage the voluntary organizations to work with us. Next slide, please. And here we had a quite interesting development as far as budget is concerned. You see here a budget of 2.25 billion, which already is enormous for 7 years. But this only happened at the very last stage in the negotiations for the new program, namely towards the end of December last year. Because before that, for the clusters 2 and 3 together, we would have had a budget of 2 billion. And now it has been considerably increased. And we are very grateful for this. And according to the amendment of the legal text, it should go into cooperation of cultural operators and cultural institutions and creative industries. Let's move to the next slide. Just to give you an overview of how the division of the money is. And here we've got an equal part for democracy, cultural heritage, and transformations for the next 2 years. For cultural heritage, we've got 141 million. But as we've got an increase in our budgets, these budgets will considerably increase as of 2023 onwards. Next slide, please. Yeah, so our intervention logic, sorry, this is very much Eurospeak, but what are the challenges we want to tackle? It's a top-down approach. Namely, we see that we've got an erosion in our social fabric. We see that cultural heritage no longer is the strong basis for a sense of belonging. It's risking losing its role, and there we really want to do something about that. And we want to make full use of the potential of cultural heritage for the competitiveness of European industry, for reinforcing the sense of belonging, and for engaging our citizens with culture to make it our culture. Next, please. Now, in research, what are the deliverables? Well, very often you've got products, you've got new vaccines to be in the COVID area. But what we produce here is quite a different thing in the social sciences. First, the tools. We've got research and innovation actions, and there we really want to tackle with the research our main societal problems. We've got innovation actions where we test for the fitness for the market, and we try to upscale what we have produced to make it fit for other reasons. And we've got the coordination and support actions where we bring together the different operators to have more impact. And our outputs are scientific analysis, methodologies and modeling, and policy recommendations. And here it links very much with the outputs of the Creative Europe program. And let me then, at the end of this small presentation, just give you a few examples. Next, please. We have regrouped them in 3 different areas: for the green planet, for digital, and for innovation. And here you see the different topics which we have in our program. Now, I need to make a commercial in our own interest. Yesterday, the work program was officially adopted and published, and we're very grateful for this. And as of next week, then you can start handing in your proposals. Next slide. Just to give you a few examples, until yesterday, the draft was still okay. Now I could already withdraw the draft, but just to give you a taste. Here we've got a topic on traditional crafts for the future. We've got many people who know the old working techniques in building, in processing wood. But what we need to do to make things competitive, we don't work only for museums, but we want to be competitive in the market. And the best example for us is what we've got with the Italian fabrics industry. They've got an old tradition. They were in decline almost for 50 years, and now in the north of Italy, new small family enterprises started again with the old techniques and combined it with cutting-edge technologies and new materials, and they're world leaders. So this for us is a good example. Next example, please. Next slide. Yeah. That is to say, we sometimes don't understand why people don't understand what people in Brussels do. And therefore, we want to see what is the role of perceptions of the different people in the regions in Europe formed by traditions, values, beliefs in shaping our societies. And this can then also help us to have a much better approach to tackle things which really matter to people. One last remark before concluding, we have in the work program for 22, which is also being published now, one topic on the music industry, one topic on the filmmaking, and one topic on endangered languages. And there we come up with policy recommendations. We have closely worked together with our colleagues in DG EAC to put these things together. I would say that this co-creation for the time being works out very well. We are at the start of a process, but there is still much more potential in it, which we need to really make best use of in the next years. With this, Francisco, I hand back to you so that we have an overview on how this works with Horizon Europe, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Harold. In the next round, I will provoke you a little more about the practical aspects of all this. But thank you for the good news, especially for the publication of the working program, which is amazing for us to start working within the program. I would like to go to Claudia because Erasmus Plus is one of our biggest and one of the very interesting programs, European programs for culture. And sometimes we are not so aware of that, but I think Claudia can give us some good tips on the subject. Thank you, Claudia.
Okay, thank you, dear organizing committee, dear participants, dear colleagues of this virtual table. Thank you very much on behalf of Erasmus Plus Education and Training Portuguese Agency. My name is Claudia, and in name of our director, Ana Cristina Perdigão, also she's launching today the new Erasmus Plus program in the beautiful city of Viana do Castelo. We congratulate this launching of Creative Europe program, hoping that this founding period will be the stage of for the best energies, synergies, and cooperation between us all. I will share my screen. I don't know if you are looking. You are.
Yeah, there we have. Yeah.
But I lost you. I don't know where you are. Okay, don't worry.
But I think you can see your screen.
Okay, you can see it.
But
yes. Well, my short presentation is titled.
Yeah.
Yes. Because it's in this side and I'm looking now for you in this screen. It's titled Enhancing Synergies for Effective Complementarities During this 21-27 period. And it's structured in three main moments. Firstly, I'll do a brief presentation of the new Erasmus Plus, considering these 7 years of the multi-annual financial framework. Secondly, we will summarize some horizontal priorities that will conduct this new Erasmus Plus program, as well as the main objectives and its key priorities. And to sum up, we will try to understand about the main synergies and complementarities between Erasmus Plus and other cohesion policy funds or other funding sources, and in what way the cultural sector, professionals and as well as organizations can benefit from this education and training program, and in what way we can work together to boost cooperation and co-creation across borders, because we have already talked about earlier, and for us it's very, very important to systematize this. And with the new program, is not intended a revolution, but some evolution. And for those that were not familiar with Erasmus Plus, Erasmus is the European program that supports education, training, youth, and sport in Europe. We are divided for different agencies among the member states, and that manage the program at national level with respecting the compliance of administrative rules. And the new Erasmus program will not change drastically. In fact, the new Erasmus is now endowed with the total budget of 26.2 billion, which means a substantial increase of more than 80% compared to the previous period. And this 2021 budget reaches about over than 2,400 million euros, and is broken down as it follows, with a greater expression at education and training dimension. When we talk about horizontal or strategic priorities of Erasmus Plus for this new programming period, Erasmus is adapting a strategy based in the major global challenges by focusing on the relevant key priorities. Well, being more inclusive, more digital, green, and a guarantee of social participation. I'll speak this part because I was intended to explain a little bit more, but I prefer to reach the third part of my presentation. And considering some key priorities and principles of Erasmus, based in previous priorities and aiming the promotion of the European Education Area 2025, Digital Green Action 21-27, as well as European Pillar of Social Rights, Erasmus Plus promotes more flexibility. The new program promotes more flexibility of the formats and simplification, like financing adaptation, for example, a mixed mobility, blended physical and virtual cooperation stressed during the COVID-19 crisis. It was strengthened during this period. It also focuses on newcomers and grassroots organizations, and promotes also more accurately international capacity across sectors and institutions. And if we are talking about topics of culture and media related across the Erasmus education and training sectors and partnerships across borders, from the previous program, from what we are able to learn by these projects that inspired or encouraged cooperation partnerships during this last period, it is possible to find out a lot of topics related to the culture sector. we are doing a more holistic reading and integrated in this partnership cooperation of our Erasmus projects. Yeah, and it is transversal to all sectors, some of them with more expression than others, like, for example, in school education topics, with the digital or the creativity and culture that stressed a lot of topics from these strategic partnerships between schools, the vocational education and training topics, also the digital development cooperation, at the higher education level, again, the digital creativity and culture, and finally adult education topics with these three main topics. Well, and thinking about what Matej told early in the beginning of our roundtable, culture is really linked and recognized also by these different Erasmus sectors with very inspiring projects. And so culture, digital, technology, media, development, cooperation, and if we want to say, if you want to do this analysis, let's say more or less sociological, we can consider that these culture professionals, or like artists, creators that are suffering a lot of impacts from this COVID-19 crisis, as well as organizations, they can be considered as let's say privileged agents, and they are absolutely educative agents as well, with common profiles and a big potential of integration in the different Erasmus Plus projects, sectors. And so, in my opinion, and I think also opinion of our agency, they can benefit from the program opportunities and features as well, and with this synergic vision of complementarity of funds, but also ideas and joint effort between entities, it can be an important step to support more people to participate in international partnerships. So by this 21-27 can be seen as an opportunity for the cultural dimension indeed. And this is why this is the reason why we need to build synergies. The European and national institutions in relation to this 21-27 programming period focus on improving synergies between different funding strands, European Erasmus Plus and others, and the other cohesion policy funds, etc. And we are working on it under the commitment to foster synergies and ensure coordination, complementarity, and coherence between the funds. And why? Why? Because we know, and particularly due to this health crisis situation and impacts, we know this frame can secure more, can secure greater impact of the different programs at different levels of our societies. It can maximize efficiency of the key priorities and horizontal priorities as inclusion, digital, green, and as well as the democratic participation. And it can also enhance coherence between programs and their operationalization. So having a coherent, goal-driven approach tackling common challenges, as our colleagues said also earlier, focusing the end user as the main goal of European action, and also this programming, working on and explore one very important and strategic thing: interaction, converging objectives and positive externalities, spillover effects, etc. And concentrating our efforts, on the operational implementation of the program. Here, the relevance of communication, cooperation between agencies, not only between Erasmus national agencies, but also with other management agencies at national level, and also between beneficiaries. So this is crucial. In other member states, the programs are managed also by different national authorities, and it's a fact that we can stress by because the national agency also belongs and is represented in this horizontal consultative working group centralized in Brussels on synergies, and so we are trying to work on these complementarities at national level. And we stressed that there is no accumulated experience of combining the different programs, but that's why it's quite difficult to stress all, but there are some good practice, and we are learning from that. So cultural sector and synergies with Erasmus Plus. Well, there are some novelties that can be very important for the cultural sectors and also other sectors, of course. I nominated here some of them. However, I will stress specifically the cooperation partnerships and the small-scale partnerships or partnerships for excellence, because they have a great potential for the sector. And considering what I have learning from yesterday during the conference and also during this morning, I think it would be something to be explored between our agencies or between our programs. And when we talk about synergies and complementarities, we need to figure out some evidence that are needed to put it to working on, and that we are already, as I said before, we are already working on it. And for example, these basic principles and concepts to be defined during 21-27. Well, a common definition is already structured and belongs already to the purposes of different institutions, namely the management authorities. Also, the definition of strategic roles by the Commission, the national and regional authorities this definition needs to be implemented and disseminated with clarity, with well-defined boundaries between management authorities, because the place of Erasmus Plus is one, the place of the agency of our colleague in Rui Inácio, Agência de Coesão, is other. We need to be be complementary, to cooperate, but we need to respect our boundaries. So as management authorities, we need guidance by the European Commission among and with financial instruments and regulation. And for instance, the guidance for and beneficiary is welcome as well, with respect to synergies and complementarities between Erasmus Plus and other funding sources. And so the basis of this synergic rapport and rapport and complementarities of budgets, but not only budgets, needs to have good communication channels and interaction at national and regional level with stakeholders, with beneficiaries too, guidance and peer learning, like, for example, sharing good practices, organizing study visits, job shadowing between agencies and institutions, and it needs to be synergic in a collaborative approach because we have different management authorities, different rules and monitoring. So, dear colleagues, to be more inclusive, more environmentally friendly, more digital, more international, we need to, I used to say we need to concatenate, and the time is now. So thank you in the name of Erasmus Agency. You can count on us with our fantastic team organized by different sectors of Erasmus, and with our experience and our contacts are here. And I hope this will be the first step of a long, at least 7 years relation between our agencies and institutions and so on. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. It was a great presentation. You just raised so many important points. I took note that you also have good news from your side. So you are launching the Erasmus program today. And I also took note the enormous variety of projects that we can do at the cultural level with the Erasmus program. We took a bit more time than I expect in this first round, but I really would like to give the screen to Rui Inácio, because the agency that he is representing, they are responsible for the cohesion policy and also for the recovery and resilience plan, which are in Portugal 2 main grounds for cultural activities as well. So I will pass to you, Rui, and after that I would like to go back to our colleagues and maybe ask you a bit more provocative questions, just to take more information to the conference. I would ask you, Rui, to be as brief as you might can. Thank you.
Thank you, Francisco. First of all, let me thank you in the name of the Agency for Development and Cohesion, the invitation made by our colleagues of Cultural Ministry and Cultural Public Administration regarding the participation of the agency in this conference, in this very important subject of synergies between different programs to increase the results and impact of the public money in the cultural and creative sectors. And I would like to be as concise as I can, since my colleagues already is my task after their very interesting presentations. Taking from the some of the things that Claudia has spoken, and also taking into account the first words coming from Francisco, I would like to say that it is important to look to the operational aspects of the complementarities and synergies between funds, but of course we need to look at the strategic consistency that could foster that complementarities. This is to say that if we have an overall strategy that is designed and includes a different range of sectors, it could be easier to after that, as the operational arrangements and the way to use the different funding sources to promote that synergies. In the case of Portugal, we approved in the November of 2020 an overall strategy, the strategy Portugal 2030, which sets the medium-term goals for the economic and social development of the country, and which is being used both for programming the National Recovery and Resilience Plan, as well as for launching the programming of the partnership agreement to be funded by the cohesion policy. Of course, it is being also used for the sake of developing other kinds of public policy measures, but I would like to stress the importance of this strategy to draft these two very important programs that I already mentioned. The way the synergies could be fostered is to choose from the beginning and try to choose during the programming phase what are the best funding sources for each type of projects, which goes to the one of the statements that Claudia said, that we need to respect boundaries, but we need to respect boundaries, we need to know the boundaries, and we need to set them since, as we know, some of these programs, both Erasmus Plus, Creative Europe, even Horizon Europe, as some merging fields of action or overlapping fields of action with more broader programs, such as the programs that I am responsible to talk about, like cohesion policy or the recovery and resilience plans. This is to say that before going to operational aspects, we need to set clearly what we want and what we need to get what we want. A sort of, as Harold showed us, in a very important best practice, we need to draft the intervention logic of each measure and try to understand what is the best instrument to finance it, taking into account the objectives of the instrument and so on. This is to say that, and from the cohesion policy point of view, the role of synergies and complementarities is a very old function of the cohesion policy, and we try to do that and improve it as long as we are paving our way. And this is to say that, for instance, instruments for complementarities with, for instance, the Horizon Europe are already drafted in the regulations, because, for instance, there are opportunities such as Seal of Excellence, which is to say that we can support in the cohesion policy projects that are not approved under the Horizon Europe program, but which are deemed as excellent by that program, which are well classified, and it is just one of the options that we've got coming from the European regulation. The other type of support that cohesion policy could give us in terms of complementarities is both in the beginning or in the previous phase of participating in central managed processes, or after that, to promote in the beginning or in the previous phase the capacity building of the agents to be part of projects in other European programs. It already happens, for instance, I'm not talking about culture in precise terms, but it could also take into account the cultural and creative sectors. But it already happens for the preparation of applications for Horizon 2020, for instance. And as Harold said, and also Laurent, I think, after the projects are being financed by the Horizon Europe or Creative Europe or even Erasmus, there are subsequent phases of that projects that could be scaled up, that could be supported by the European cohesion policy, or if it is eligible under the Recovery and Resilience Plan, it could also be financed in the Recovery and Resilience Plan. At the same time, the specialization of funding sources is important. This is to say that if, for instance, I will provide support for digitalization of creative and cultural sectors through the Recovery and Resilience Plan, as it occurs in the Portuguese case, where the Resilience and Recovery Plan, provided for that kind of support. This is to say that it frees some resources from the other funding sources, namely, in the case of the cohesion policy, to use the money in other directions. This is to say that I specialize one of the funding sources. I opt to use one of the funding sources for use in one of the fields, one of the types of support, and it frees the other. But for that to be possible, and I will end with a note on this, as Claudia said, we need to know the rules, and I am not asking for guidance from the Commission, but what I think it is important to note, as Laurent already said, that we are comparing and trying to make complementarities, to build bridges between policies that has different nature. Some of these policies that we are talking about are centrally managed policies, for instance, both Horizon Europe, Erasmus Plus, as well as the Creative Europe, and cohesion policy, and in a particular form also RRP, which is a mingle between the central managed policy and the shared managed policy, are provided, and cohesion policy is provided through shared management. This has not only an implication that that if the country is in the driver's seat or sharing the driver's seat with the Commission, but as well as regarding the rules. Some of the work has already been done. This kind of preoccupations regarding the level playing field of the rules has been one of the main concerns in the negotiations that end between the end of last year and the beginning of this year regarding the all set of European policies to be funded under the multi-annual financial framework. But I would like to stress that it is important for the final beneficiaries that the set of rules is clear, and as far as we can, and of course maintaining the differences between the policies, that the set of rules is clear, and the rationale behind those rules and the difference between those rules is also clear, not for us, the people that are in this fabric of funding public policies, but for those that are benefiting that because because it is important for them to understand well why if I am funded by one program and try to be funded for the same purpose, or for instance a subsequent project or a subsequent phase of the project in the other fund or in the other policy area, I will get different rules. I'll stop here by stating the importance of level playing field for the complementarities and synergies. And Francisco, I'll get back to you.
Thank you, Rui, so much. What an amazing intervention. You just raised so many important points. I just will allow me to stress two, which I thought that they are really, really important, which is you said that the complementarity starts at the strategic point of view. That's very, very interesting. That's a very key point of this, because if we need to establish bridge between programs, we need to do it also at a strategic point of view level. I think it's a very, very important message. I also took note that three things that you said that are very important for the sector. One is the possibility of catch up or recover some projects that were not financed but have good score and have a good impact in the country, that can be financed in the different instruments at national level. This is really, really important. Also the capacity building, which is the key aspect of our sector. I always said this. I think the researchers already made the shift. I think the cultural sector have to make this shift. So capacity building is absolutely essential. And the fact that we can finance new phases of the same project at national level with national, it's subsidiarity instruments or other kind of instruments. So I think you raised very important points. Thank you. We are a bit out of schedule. We still have some time, but I prepared some questions, I would say more practical questions to each of you. I really would like to make those questions, but I have to ask you to be absolutely practical on the answers and very quick, but I really would like to make the questions anyway. So maybe start by Maciej Hoffman. I was fascinated with the idea of this new interactive tool. Just tell us more, what you can say more about this new interactive tool that will be launching September.
Okay, yeah, I'll gladly tell you more. Yeah, and the idea behind it, as I said, is to better valorize and somehow demystify the EU funding opportunities for culture, because, of course, we do fully understand that, as I said, Creative Europe is the only program as such which was created with culture and creative sectors in mind. And when I say culture and creative sectors, again, I'm sure many of you know that this is a very broad definition, because it's both market and non-market oriented, let's say, actions and sectors. So it ranges from video game companies, for instance, to public museums. In a way, with these interactive tools, we want to cater to the needs of these different subsectors. So the idea is really that a user arrives at the landing page, chooses the sector they represent, what kind of specific needs they have, whether it's for capacity building, internationalization, knowledge sharing and peer learning. And then the interface gives them information about specific programs that are available. Of course, providing relatively general information. And then, of course, if they want, they can kind of follow up and read more about them. But what's also important is that the interface would give them good practices, examples from 2014, 2020 projects that can be relevant. Of course, the thing is that, we'll be showing and showcasing new programs, but, in quite a few of these programs, in fact, as it was said, we're not speaking about the revolution, but rather the evolution. So we believe that the, specific, for instance, good examples from Horizon 2020 can be useful also for Horizon Europe applicants, or, examples from structural funds from 2014-2020 perspective can be useful. And then again, the idea is really to demystify, to convince cultural sectors who often would say, for instance, okay, Erasmus Plus is not for me because I'm not educational institution. Or again, Horizon Europe is not relevant for me because it must be only, for hardcore research institutions and so on. So this is really this idea of demystifying. The request very much comes from, of course, from the sectors themselves, very much hit by COVID-19. But also, for instance, from the Council and EU culture ministries. And this is something very clearly expressed in the Council conclusions this May, adopted under the Portuguese presidency on recovery and resilience of culture and creative sectors. There is a very open pledge to the European Commission to also provide this information. So we're essentially following up on that. And as I said, stay tuned, and then we hope to unveil it in September. Maybe one point I could add, linking to the new Creative Europe program, because with the new program, we also want to to possibly give a slightly more enforced role to Creative Europe desks that provide information about the program on the ground. Of course, their focus is still Creative Europe program. This is not changing, but we do know that many of the desks have already been active in informing about other funding opportunities. So we also hope that that such a tool would be helpful for the Creative Europe desks on the ground. So again, to know what's the landscape beyond Creative Europe and to be able to better advise culture and creative sectors, because of course desks, Creative Europe desks are often the first contact persons and kind of ambassadors, in fact, of European Union when it comes to culture and cultural funding.
Thank you. Thank you. We are very lucky with our desk, actually, in Portugal. But are you going to use your words, saying, you said, Erasmus is not for me. I think it's the normal sentence that I listen to it. So I go back to Claudia and I would say, how can we help them to configure a project that fits in Erasmus? Because sometimes this sentence is so usual, the Erasmus is not for me, and it's wrong. Erasmus is also for cultural sector.
Yes, as I told in the earlier in the presentation, artists, creators, I don't know, cultural professionals, the different organizations from this sector of culture, they are they have all the potential to participate at the Erasmus. And when I'll briefly read the perspective of Creative Europe and the program, etc. I could see a broad range of activities that can be able to be inscribed at Erasmus projects in we have different sectors. We have adult education, and sometimes these activities carried out by cooperation partnerships or even small scale partnerships, because it's the first year, and this is a novelty of the program. So they can explore, they can try at least 1 year, 2 years just to see how it works, and just to see how I can have a small scale partnership with different with other colleagues from different countries, and how can I have this experience of internationalization, co-creation, cross borders with this specific thematic. And we also have top-ups for social inclusion, and it's needed some complementarities, but we are here to help and to explain you everything.
Thank you. Yes, I also, I will talk for myself. The agency works amazingly well in Portugal. We are so lucky to have you guys from the other side and help us with the applications. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Since we have more or less the same problem within the Erasmus, within the Horizon Europe, I will ask Harold, what would be your advice for a newcomer? Claudia used a word that I really loved, grassroots institutions. How would be your advice as an expert to get into the process of Horizon Europe? Harold.
Okay, thanks very much. Now, Horizon Europe is an extremely competitive program, which on the one hand is good, but on the other hand, of course, is difficult. In particular, in the field of social sciences and humanities, we've got the lowest success rate of the whole program. I speak now of figures from Horizon 2020, sometimes in some years reaching a success rate only of 6%. This means that out of 100 projects which are submitted, 94 are not funded, even if they are sometimes very good. So this is a big challenge, and I need to mention this always in the beginning, because you also need to know when you start working in a consortium, you also need to assess the chances for being successful. What we would like to do is that over time we would come to a success rate between 18 and 20%. That would make some sense. So this is one thing. The second thing is that we want to achieve a European impact. For this, you need to have consortia with a minimum of 3 countries, and you need to have a considerable size of these projects. I would suggest that in the beginning, when you start working on this, try to become a member of a consortium, certainly not a leader. Try to work together with other institutions with whom you have already cooperated, maybe informally on a different occasion, because trust in these things is very important. And when I say this, I often see also that we have then sometimes more of the same, that there are many consortia which have been successful and therefore have built up trust, and they submit and submit again. So we need to get some fresh air into this. So start locally, start with people you know, and build your way up. One last element in that, people say that sometimes for arts and humanities it's particularly difficult. And that is true, because in our research, we are still, although it's getting gradually better, but we are still a little bit in our silo approach, and that we only deal with the STEM sciences. Now, let me, to conclude with, give you just, we need to have a more holistic approach, because we are also emotional, and this makes the entirety of a personality. There has been the famous psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, and he has given a very good example. When you stand in front of, well, you look at the circle, you stand in front of the circle. But if you take 2 steps to the right or to the left, you might then see what is behind the circle. And this can be a cone, this can be a cylinder, this can be a hemicycle. Meaning that if you change the angle of your approach, you might all of a sudden discover the full dimension of what is there. And if we can achieve this change of dimension with other disciplines being involved, this would be great. I hand back to you.
Thank you. I just love the idea of the cycle. Well done. Thank you. Changing the angle. I would like to finish this roundtable asking an example to Laurent, but before, I would like to go back to Rui Inácio, because we just approved our resilience and recovery plan, and in the beginning we had no presence. The cultural sector was not present. After the consultation period, the things change, and now we have a C4 component. It's a bit more domestic policy, but anyway, I wouldn't miss this opportunity to ask very briefly to Rui, how can we use C4 component in our resilience plan? Give some tips to our public, please.
Thank you, Francisco, and as you said, our resilience and recovery plan has been just approved or proposed to be approved by the Commission in a communication and a proposal of decision to be approved by the Council, but we are in a good track for its fast approval. And as you said, culture, and it is important to note that, because participation from the citizens is very important, and culture is being included in the RRP after the public consultation. This is to say that mechanisms of participatory democracy works. It is important to state that in the times we are living now. And what is the main purpose or the main goals for that component? First of all, the component has 4 main goals. Maintaining and creating jobs for artists, creators, technicians, and cultural structures in the one side. Of course, taking into account the need that the national heritage, both material and immaterial, needs to be needs to have investment in, so it can be a sort of a base, a network basis for the creation of these jobs, of the maintenance of these jobs. Encourage digital transition in culture and creative sectors. This is to say mainstreaming here in the culture, the importance of digital transition. As a third goal, the mainstreaming of the proposed the other twin transition, the climate transition, so we can improve the energy and water efficiency of cultural facilities, so they could be more resilient to climate change and so on, and could also contribute to reduce the impact of the climate change. And as a final goal, the importance to strengthen the territorial interdependencies for cultural heritage, equipment and cultural networks. This is to say that try to have a territorial approach that could make the use of culture goods and services more efficient, and of course more spread over the territory. For that purpose, we have two different measures. One measure linked directly to support cultural networks and digital transition, and another measure directly related with cultural heritage. To be as concise as I can, the support to cultural networks and digital transition is mainly based on the modernization of the technological infrastructure of the cultural equipment. This is to say that providing public libraries, public museums, public heritage to be modernized in terms of information and communication technologies and digitalization. Also, a second strand dealing with digitization of arts and heritage, namely trying to have a meeting and profiting from that heritage and from the arts, and also have a small strand, but also an important strand regarding the internationalization, modernization, and digital transition of books and authors, namely trying to have systems that promotes the translation of Portuguese authors and their internationalization, as well as providing a modernization and digital transition of both bookstores as well as of libraries. To conclude, regarding cultural heritage, it is mainly focused on requalification and conservation of national museums, monuments, palaces, and national theaters. And there is also, regarding cultural heritage, a very small scale, but very, very important, and we hope that it could be very impactful, a small program for a material heritage named Saber Fazer Program. This is know how to do in a very literal translation, and it is based on the promotion, the establishment of a technological center and of laboratories that will boost the existence of competences and skills and qualifications on traditional arts and crafts, and trying to maintain and promote intangible heritage that is based on very traditional practices and from Portugal. This is the main goals and the main strengths of the Portuguese Resilience and Recovery Plan. Francisco, I'll get back to you Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think it was very useful for us to know what is inside the program for the cultural sector, because it's been so mediatic nowadays that it's very useful to know in a very pragmatic way what can we expect. I'm going to finalize by you, Laurent, and in a very pragmatic way. Do you have a good example from a cohesion policy project that you would like to share with us to finalize?
Yes. Before giving this example, and don't worry, I will be short. Just a few words to say that in this new 2021-2027 period, cohesion policy will continue to provide funding for culture and cultural heritage in cities and in regions. In fact, the investments in culture will be possible under all cohesion policy objectives. There are 5 cohesion policy objectives, provided indeed that the main objective of these investments is to contribute to achieving these objectives and that they comply with the relevant enabling conditions or minimum requirements. Secondly, there is a thematic concentration on the first 2 policy objectives, which are smarter Europe and a greener Europe. So it means that more funds will go to these policy objectives. And so for the first policy objective, a smarter Europe, the smart specialization strategy play an important role, because, as I said earlier, the investments should for research, innovation, digitalization, and support to SMEs, they should take into account the priorities identified in the smart specialization strategies. So I'm coming to my example, which is about the growth and competitiveness of SMEs in the creative and culture sectors. In fact, the example comes from southern Sweden. It's called Southern Sweden Creatives Project, and it provided. It was implemented of course, in the previous program period, but it provided export assistance for small and medium-sized enterprises working in the cultural and creative sectors, film, television, digital gaming, digital media, and design industries. And the projects enable around 130 companies, of which about 50 startups, to participate in more than 30 international activities, such as fairs and festivals, on more than 200 occasions. So this is a typical example of what can be supported under ERDF with the first policy objective, a smarter Europe.
Thank you, Laurent. Thank you to all our speakers. I was thinking of making a summing up, but I think the speakers and the interventions were so rich. I think we raised so many interesting points. We talk about communication. We talk about this new interactive tool. We're going to give a very important hand. We talk about complementarity in the strategic point of view. Claudia, our colleague from Erasmus, just raised so many examples from key action to the new small partnerships. So I think we have a very important ground to work. So I hope this is the starting point of our future conversations in the next 7 years. I also would like to say that we are completely out of schedule, so but that's a good thing, because the conversation was so lively and the information was so rich that it might compensate the fact that we are a bit out of schedule. So let me say again to the presidency, thank you for the invitation. Personally, it was a pleasure to be here and to share this moment with you. I also would like to thank our speakers, and going to use one of the sentence that Harold used. Let's change the angle in the future in this subject. I think would be a very important message. Thank you to all. Have a nice weekend, and thank you for your interventions, your participation in the session. Thank you again.
Bye.